actually carrying the drone up. This is the first-person camera. It's actually got two cameras. This is the one that we use to fly, looking through goggles. And this is the GoPro. It's stabilized. So this is one of the latest drones to hit the market. We're actually transmitting to the back of the room. I'm quite impressed that it works. This is mainly for outdoor use. It's not bad. Okay, so if we switch to the presentation, please. It was just a little intro into how I sort of became very aware of the maker movement. And you know, at the heart of a drone is in fact the maker movement, and these would not have been possible without a confluence of, I guess, ideas and a different way of developing physical goods. So for the next 25 minutes, we'll be covering collaborative development, open source hardware, rapid prototyping, crowdsource funding, and direct digital manufacture, and then wrapping up with how this might impact the economy. So one of the best definitions for the maker movement is this: the web generation, so people who grew up with the internet, creating physical things from bits of information. And if you want a fantastic book about this, Chris Anderson, the recently former editor of Wired magazine, who's now started up a drone company, which I'll be talking about, he's also the author of The Long Tail and Free, and now how the maker movement is going to revolutionize manufacturing. The reason this is important is that in any developed country, the digital economy still only makes 10% of the GDP. So the rest of it is physical goods. We still buy, ship, and sell. So straight into collaborative development. Collaborative development allows you to go from this, which is a Reaper drone that costs nearly $17 million, to this, which costs a tiny fraction of that amount, but with a lot of the similar technologies. And this is in the space of 5 or 6 years. So when you start slashing zeros off the cost of doing business, and not just the business of killing people, things get really, really interesting. So this was actually one of my favorite quotes. To start off with collaborative development, it's important to be ignorant in public. And for Chris Anderson, I think it was 4 years ago, that looked like this. So this is the community that he started for himself. He was interested in building drones, and he didn't know how to do it. So he wanted to collect as many people from around the world as possible to help him do that. Now this is quite different to the traditional way of starting a company, where you kind of assume that the best possible talent happens to live within commuting distance of where you decide to set up shop. This way, you can actually, if your idea is compelling to people, you can attract some of the best minds in the world. So NASA, rocket engineers are part of this community. And it had very humble beginnings. It just runs on a Ning platform, didn't cost him anything to set up, $30 a month. And it's grown and grown and grown. It's the preeminent sort of drone community online now. This is how they started. At the heart of this is the brain of a quadcopter, if you like. There's a Mindstorm Lego plastic thing down the bottom, gyroscope sensor, prototype board, an Arduino controller, which takes in sensor information from the gyroscope and controls the motors through the servo driver. And they connected an external GPS to this. This is what DIY Drones looks like now. It has 43,000 members, and they're adding 1,000 new members a month. I think the FAA recently said that by the end of the decade, there will be 30,000 drones over the skies of the US. Chris wrote a piece saying, well, we sold 10,000 last year. We're probably going to double that this year, so your numbers are a little off. And this is where they're at now. So this is a flight controller, similar to the prototype, but the community has pulled together to design the circuit board, test everything, design the software, and they've released this under an open hardware license, which I'll go into a little bit more. And just as a company, this is fascinating to me. This is where 3D Robotics, which is the company that Chris started with his co-founder, who happens to be a teenager from Tijuana, Mexico. Like, in what universe do you start a company with a teenager from Mexico? Well, it's the sort of universe where meritocracy is more important than which MBA you have. So, what's his name? Surname is Juan Munez. He was participating in this community and adding a lot of value. So when it came to starting a company, Chris tapped him. And this is him in Tijuana starting off the first board production in 2009. In 2010, Chris, of course, used his kids to pack all of the parts when it was still very much in kit form. 2012, they've got quite a sophisticated production facility in San Diego. And just last month, I think they opened a massive warehouse in Tijuana with some pretty sophisticated equipment. This all happened from an open source community where he started being ignorant in public. So onto open source hardware. People are familiar with open source software. Most people that think of open source software as this guy, free hugs. Generates a lot of value, but it's free, right? How do you make money from free? This guy knows. It's a great video, by the way. So what are some of the deluxe hugs that aren't necessarily obvious, but are very much in place in the software world? So you've heard of Firefox, the browser, but did you know it generates $300 million a year in revenue from one client, Google? So when you type in a search in the search box, that goes to Google, and Google pays Firefox. So it's an indirect payment for services. Red Hat Linux powers most of the internet that we enjoy, from banks to social media companies, and it's a free operating system. They generated $1.3 billion in premium support services last year. That's an amazing business from something that is free. So there are lots of opportunities to create value from free or capture value from free. And by the way, Facebook has 180,000 servers. If they were to pay Microsoft the licensing fee for Windows, that'd be $90 million. So Facebook is around because of free software. This is a great little video which really opened my mind to what open hardware is. I'll just play it for a couple of minutes.
What is open source hardware? It's a physical item whose source files have been shared openly with the world and can be freely copied or modified. In the open world, it's not about reinventing the wheel. Anyone can improve and build upon the ideas of those around them, and innovation is accelerated through the open exchange of ideas. Rather than starting from scratch, open source hardware allows you to modify a design for your own project or even turn it into a business. In 1817, a two-wheeled machine called a draisine was invented. It was made entirely of wood, propelled by walking, and designed to ease travel across the royal gardens. But because people saw hundreds of ways to make that machine work for them, over the past 200 years they modified the prototype, adding useful things like pedals, rubber tires, gears, chains, and durable metal frames. Over time, our international community took a simple machine's original design, shared their ideas, and customized the modern bicycle to suit the needs of 1.4 billion people around the world. This collaboration is what the open source movement is all about, and its ideology has the potential to shape the future of how our society does business. In a world fueled by open contribution, companies can no longer rest on intellectual property. This allows the open source hardware world to quickly find the most efficient and fastest producers for physical goods. On a level playing field strengthened by community input, companies will be distinguished by their adaptability and the quality of their products. By opening progress to the public, we put the catalyst for positive change in the hands of those who care about it most, and we can begin to see innovation driven by passion and equality. That's where we come in. The Open Source Hardware Association recognizes a need to improve the way we work together to revitalize collaboration at home and around the world. We want to show people that sharing ideas makes for better ones, and that open source is a smart and sustainable path to a stronger, happier community. What will you share?
It's pretty cool. Who knew the bicycle was an open source piece of hardware that lots of companies are making money from? So into the drone world, drones came out of the military-industrial complex. Very, very expensive, high redundancy, very nice hardware. But an autopilot, which is the brain of a drone, from Lockheed Martin, today is $8,500. Used to be a lot more than that, but they've had to come down because of these. And that sits in a very cool-looking drone that looks like this, and it's controlled by tablets, very sophisticated, a couple of $100,000. And that's what happens in the closed world. It's quite typical. So what happens when people with an interest, who are ignorant in public, who get together over a few years? This is about to be released next month, and it is pretty much the same capabilities as what you just saw for $8,500. It is rocking the sort of aerospace world. It's an incredibly capable 32-bit processing computer that sits in one of these. It allows you to connect all sorts of sensors. This is the thing that will finally allow us to get much closer to a lot more safety and reliability. So the more sensors you can have in, the more situational awareness there is, the less chance it's going to crash into people. And that's kind of the next generation. And this is just an example of how small they can get. So this is a fully functional flight controller with an inbuilt GPS on your fingertip. And that's open source as well, and that's $230. So on to prototyping. Everyone's heard of 3D printing, and it certainly plays a big role in the drone community. You can literally download a drone frame design from, this is Maker Thingiverse, and have it printed locally. If you've got a MakerBot agency somewhere, or if you've got one in your home or your school, and off you go. So you buy the electronics, you buy the frame design, off you go. And of course, you can modify it really easily. This guy blew me away. This is another open source project. Essentially, he put calipers together with electronics, and he can make anything fly. Because the flight controller doesn't care about the orientation, it figures it out in the air. So you can make a bicycle wheel fly. If that doesn't impress you, how about a keyboard? It's pretty amazing when you think, hang on, we can make anything fly. And what are the opportunities there? As I mentioned, at the heart of this is usually an Arduino microcontroller. It's not quite a computer. A Raspberry Pi is something you'll hear a lot about in the Maker movement. That's more like a computer. It runs a Linux operating system, whereas this runs the Arduino operating system. This is a lot more real time. So what's happening with my gyroscope sensor or accelerometer sensor? What do I need to do with my motor? So if I'm pitching this way because of the wind, I need to spin this motor up very quickly. And these things are very cheap. So I think Arduinos should be around $30, and the Raspberry Pi is between $25 and $30. And very much at the heart of a lot of electronics. The massive technology enabler, in fact, though, is Apple and Samsung. They have made so many of these smartphones that happen to have accelerometers and gyroscopes in them that they've collapsed the cost of things, of sensors. This is what a gyroscope looked like about 20 years ago. In today's money, it's about $17,000, and it weighed 5 kilos. And that's what it looks like now on that board that they made. So it's a solid-state chip. It's less than $10, and it's thanks to Apple and Samsung. Crowdfunding. Can I get people to stand up if you've been to the Kickstarter website? Quite a lot of people. Great. Stay standing if you've funded something. If you haven't funded something, sit down. Wow, that's amazing. So about 80% of people, when they went there, they funded it. Stay standing if you've actually run a Kickstarter project. Stay standing if it was successful. Well done. Congratulations. All right. Okay, everyone can sit down now. These are some pretty amazing stats. This is as of yesterday. So Kickstarter has successfully handed over $700 million to 50,000 projects over 3 years. And the breakdown is there. So the most popular category is computer games. I think primarily because they brought a lot of old-timers back in genres that were well-loved, and they're well-loved by people who are cashed up at the moment. So a lot of cash was raised for games. Second, films and videos, very, very popular. So artistic endeavors is what Kickstarter was originally started for. Design, so things like iPhone cases or what's they done? Can't think of it right now. Music is number 4, and quite a long way down, technology. But if you look at the trajectory, technology, so hardware is really coming up fast. So when you go to Kickstarter, this is typically what you see on the homepage. This was yesterday's homepage. I don't find it terribly easy to navigate, and the way I recommend doing it is going straight to the right-hand side and going to something you're interested in, so one of the categories. So let's say it's technology. Now you start to see a page about technology products, and at the top, it's a curated list of 3 by staff. That can be interesting, but not so much for me. Just underneath, it's popular this week. So what is the crowd? What is the marketplace saying that it likes? And here's something that perhaps gets my attention. And this is live as of yesterday. So Hex, a copter that anyone can fly, they wanted $10,000. They're currently at $421,000. So it's massively overfunded. And this is a way that I like to use Kickstarter as an intelligence tool to see what the marketplace values right now. I spent a bit of time in market research, and the biggest thing I learned is that I really don't care what you say you're going to do versus what you actually do. And when I can measure your behavior with your dollars, that is amazing information, and Kickstarter gives you that in real time. This is what the project page looks like. I saw this very early on. I thought, no way, this is going to fly. It's a little project that allows you to build a quadcopter. You can select your frame. You can download different frame designs, 3D print them, put the electronics on a new frame and fly it with your iPhone. Fantastic. Who knew it overfunded? And it's got a week to go if you want to fund this, by the way. So a little bit lower down the page, they talk about all the press coverage they've got. Great. On the right-hand side are the pledge levels. So what is it that the people are actually funding? And you can actually see the numbers. So 9 backers pledged $9. But $39, that was very early on, and unfortunately it's going to scroll a bit too fast. Basically, you can get one of those quadcopters for $40, and most of the people funded that. That's what you get. They talk, in the video, they talk about the team. And by the way, this team is well known to the online communities, and that's a big sort of cornerstone. If you've been participating in existing communities, you get a lot more support and you get a big head start when you launch a project. Has anyone seen KickTrack? Good. KickTrack is kind of like Google Analytics for Kickstarter. So it's a separate website that you can plug any Kickstarter project into, and it gives you cool information like this. So it shows you the current trajectory of donations and where the project is likely to end up in terms of dollars. So the blue line down the bottom is what they were after, and they've obviously exceeded it. They're trending towards over $500,000. Then you can go in and see on a day-by-day basis how much money was donated by how many people and what was the volume of conversation about it. Then you can start mapping interesting things. They've also got a collection of news items about that project. So you can see that Mashable got hold of it about 4 days after launch. And then there was a bit of a dip, but you see that pick up again a few days later. Why was that? Well, TechCrunch picked up that it was a really popular project and it was massively overfunded. So that became a news story. And you can actually map the media coverage onto a project. It's a fantastic way to look into a marketplace. Even if you're not backing projects or running your own projects, you've got real live marketplace data about where money is being allocated. So onto manufacturing. How am I going? 5 minutes. Okay. Manufacturing's getting very disrupted by organizations like TechShop. They lease a warehouse space, put $2 million worth of the latest laser cutting, 3D printing, CNC milling machines. And not only do they do that, they're not just a normal factory, they invite people to set up shop there. So in their floor plan, you've got all the machining areas, but you've also got desks and meeting rooms. So they want people to live there and start a business there. One of the high-profile businesses that was started in Tech Shop is Square, that credit card reading thing that you plug into your iPhone. It's a massive company. So they want to attract ordinary people who have an idea, and maybe it's been funded on Kickstarter, and Tech Shop is the place that they can at least prototype it and maybe even go into manufacture it. And their motto is dream it, build it, but increasingly you can also manufacture it. So it's not that much different to take your CAD files from your prototype to print it out on a 3D printer or laser cut it. You can also send those files to a manufacturer who's tooled up to receive those files and go into production for you. And we're now starting to see things that can only be created using 3D printing technology. And this will get cheaper and cheaper. These are speakers with embedded LEDs, and they look quite beautiful. And they would actually hold up to the highest end speakers on the market. This is a photo of the Tesla factory. What you're seeing, all the red there, are KUKA robot arms from Germany. These things are really popular. China is buying them by the truckload because they're cheaper than having humans do things. And when you've got, but basically these are very flexible robots that are driven by software. Traditional production lines are set up to do one thing really, really well. They're not very good at changing. The Tesla production line can do one make of car on one pod and a completely different make of car on the next pod. They don't care, it's just a software change. And the robots pick different parts and assemble them differently based on software. So what I'm arguing, and I don't take credit for this, this is Chris Anderson, is that factories will retool themselves to be able to accept your files, your prototype files, and go into low production runs. One of the interesting things that I saw happen in real time, 3D Robotics is the company that Chris started from DIY drones. The community said, look, it's great that you've got the diagrams for the circuit boards and we can assemble it, but we don't want to. We want you to do that and we'll pay you for it. So the community said, take our money. Add value, take our money. And they absolutely do that. But it's an open source design, and organically what happened is a company in Hong Kong with manufacturing capabilities started manufacturing it as well. The difference is on 3D Robotics, it sells for about $160, and Hobby King sells for $70 to $80. And when you halve the price, a lot more people get exposure to it, and it grows the pie, and that's really exciting. The community, of course, is very loyal to 3D Robotics, and they kind of poo-poo this, but it's all good. This is kind of a very early stage next step for manufacturing. Noco seeks to be a global manufacturing platform/exchange. So you can design something, upload it, choose your materials. So it can be physical materials, it can be 3D printing, plastics, metals. You can also select electronics. It's made and then sent to you. The key thing is it can be made close to where your customers are. And this leads on to economic impact. When you don't have to ship things halfway around the world from China, that means you can get it into your customers' hands much, much quicker. This is why Apple is moving its production back to the US for many of its products. Massively reduces carbon footprint, and if you've ever manufactured something in China, you will know you have quality control issues that are very expensive to iron out. So just, I've got 1 minute left. This is a really interesting parallel from where drones are today and where computers were in the late 70s, early 80s. So in the 60s and 70s, they were mainframes. How cool is this? This is the Westpac mainframe with the Sydney Harbour Bridge in the background. And of course, drones started killing people for the US Army. Today, over the last year or so, we've sort of been in this mode. This is the Apple I, this is the Apple II. Hobbyists, you have to know what you're doing. You have to be into electronics to do this. You still have fairly complicated flight controllers to be able to fly it. They're fairly dangerous. They're not that reliable. And that's why I'm not flying it in here. But we're just starting to transition into... Maybe, if we can find a room later, maybe I'll... we're starting to get into the world of the Macintosh. So it's no longer just hobbyists and technical people. It's people with a purpose, people with an application. So computers, we didn't know what computers were going to be used for at this stage. But here we discovered word processing and spreadsheets, and much later on we discovered the internet, and it's had a massive impact. And we're just starting to see drones that are controlled by tablets. So you don't fly these things. I don't even fly that. I just tell it where to go. And you'll be able to point on the map where to go, at what speed, at what direction, altitude, and it'll just do it. So it's a computer flying for you. So some of the current applications of drones that create economic impact, certainly aerial surveillance for fires. Hollywood is really hot on this stuff. They're actually lobbying the FAA to make this, to put into the hands of filmmakers. Real estate, policing. But the biggest application seems to be that the spreadsheet application for drones is actually agriculture. It's for a number of reasons. Farms tend to be away from people. You don't really want to fly these over people. You don't ever want to fly these over people. And farms can be very difficult to manage. They're very inefficient to manage. Big reason for that is that we're actually, our eyesight is really bad at seeing the natural world with respect to the amount of information there. So what you're seeing on the right-hand side is a near-infrared image of a farm. So when plants photosynthesize, they reflect a lot of near-infrared light. And if you can capture that, you can see parts of your farm that are growing very well or need attention or may be diseased. So now you can start using drones to figure out where to have surgical strikes with pesticides or with irrigation or with fertilizer. And this is a magazine for farmers, and drones are on the cover of most of them. And by the way, this image came from another Kickstarter project. I think it's really exciting when grassroots movements are actually starting to have big implications into big business. So I'll wrap up there. I've just run out of time. I actually got started in this 6 months ago. My background is digital marketing. I hadn't touched hardware for a couple of decades, or more than a couple of decades, but I started in electronics and I've rediscovered the joy of making physical things. And I hope to start a business around this, teaching people how to make